Hi, everyone. Just want to have a quick word with you guys. We've, after much examination of the channel and stuff, we've come to a decision. So we're going to be stepping away from HFY because we think the market is oversaturated. There are too many channels producing HFY content, and we can't see a future in the genre because of how many channels there are. For the last several months, we've been looking for a new genre or type of style that we could do that would be less saturated and give us more opportunity to grow. And we've landed on doing something called, I don't know whether you guys know this, but it's called SCP, which is, it stands for Secure, Contain, and, Protect. So we think this is an underserved niche on the internet. So going forward, we will be moving towards doing SCP tales and SCP stories. So according to the website, SCPs are just a classification of things, and then the tales are stories about the things that were secure and contained and protected, I think. But anyways, I hope you understand the change. And I think with us putting in our effort towards this, we can bring this little niche to light and introduce a lot more people to it. So for the first one, I picked a story that comes in 3 parts. They'll all be part of this video. It's going to be a long video, which I think is fair for a new direction for the channel. I think it gives it a good start. So yes, I hope you'll join me in this journey, and more importantly, I hope you enjoyed these stories. Let's get this started. The Trail for Beasts. The office smelled like new paint and fresh laminate. It had belonged to a previous site director and another director before them, stretching back to when they laid down the concrete pad the original building sat on. That building, like so many other systems within the Foundation, was now buried underneath a growing network of structures and bureaucracies that stretched around it. The epicenter of a web spun by a great invisible spider. Here, at its heart, Yoshihide could see every twist and tangle, every humming thread, each unknowing participant walking across the latticework. He wondered if the last director had seen him as well, slowly working his way inwards towards this office. The last director had, like many other directors, left suddenly when a new appointment was selected for them. Yoshihide remembered a time early in his career when a fellow researcher, one several years his senior, had cautioned him about the nature of careers in the Foundation. "Don't get thinking you have any say in the matter," he said, a smoldering cigarette clutched in his fingers. "The Foundation offers you opportunities like you'd never believe, but the choice you have is an illusion. They'll put you where they want to put you and make you think that it was your idea. You get to think that you're the master of your own destiny, but they will get what they want. In the end, they win either way." He couldn't help but feel, though, that he somehow broken the mold. The bookshelves, the desk, the engraved nameplate on the door, Okutagawa Yoshihide, site director. The trappings of success, certainly, but all of them everybody's own. He was a containment specialist, the best containment specialist, he often heard his peers say, and this was his reward for that talent. In this site were teams of doctors, researchers, clerks, all of them answering to him directly. There was no longer a medium he needed to answer through, no more taskmasters who had to be compelled into action. Sure, there were faceless directors and overseers above him, somewhere. But as he climbed the ladder to this office, those names had become less and less tangible and further away. He reported to someone, somewhere. But did it matter? If you never saw them, did they even exist? This rise hadn't come without sacrifice. Choices he had been forced to make to reach the room he now sat in. He'd felt a keen sense of camaraderie to his co-workers at the beginning, assistants and junior researchers who had all come up in the Federation around the same time as he. Back then, the world had seemed so much bigger than it was now, and their companionship had been a life raft on the wild and uncertain sea. Over time, his work had filled more of the space where those friendships had lived, until one day he woke up and realized they were all gone. Yoshihide didn't mind it, though. The cost of his success, he reasoned. If the worst of it was losing a few drinking buddies, then that wasn't the end of the world. There had been other costs, though, greater and lesser. He had been away when his father had died, at a conference about staff reorganization. They had never been close, but as he'd gotten older, his old man had begun opening up more and more to Yoshihide. "Making up for lost time, if you'll let me," he used to say through a crooked smile and missing teeth. They had shared a few moments years before, after his mother died. He had always intended to go see him before the end, but those meetings seemed so important at the time. "This will look very good to senior leadership," an executive personnel manager had told him, so he went. When he got the call from the hospital that his father had passed, he had his affairs managed remotely to avoid having to leave the conference. He didn't have the heart to ask the nurse if his father had died alone. He knew the answer. The worst, though, had happened long before he had ever walked into his new office. She was an agent assigned to the local branch of Global Occult Coalition. When Yoshihide had been stationed in a little research site outside of Okazaki, he was taken by her immediately. She was clever, funny, sharp. Her eyes were cutting. He used to say that there was nothing that he could hide from her that she couldn't just see through. Her laughter was a song, and her touch a warm breeze in the summer. When they were together, Yoshihide made excuses to get away from work, something unthinkable now, so they could spend the afternoons together. They had plans to get to a place in the city, to start a family, plans that didn't include the Foundation. When their daughter was born, Yoshihide thought he might have finally found something that filled the hole in his heart. Then she was killed, of all things, in a car accident, and Yoshihide was alone again. In the days and weeks that followed her funeral, he convinced himself there was no deeper pit of despair a man could suffer, no lower agony. Eventually, he threw himself back into his work, a welcome reprieve from his despair that helped to silence the screaming he heard when he closed his eyes at night. He took his daughter, only a child at the time, and moved to Europe. He found the pathway to promotion ready and available, and seized after it. At no point had he ever noticed the strings pulling at him, or the hands on the marionette. He was too busy looking forward to ever look up. So no, he thought that old researcher had been wrong. The Foundation had opened doors for him, undoubtedly, but he was the one who chose which to walk through. It had been his own efforts that put his name on the door, and it would be his own hand that he climbed to the even higher offices than this. His meditations were disrupted by a knock at the door. A secretary, he hadn't learned their names yet, poked his head into the office. "A visitor for you, Director," he said. "O5 clearance." Yoshihide sat up straight in his chair. This wouldn't be the first encounter with an O5 liaison, and he knew enough to never let your guard down around these peoples. Liaisons were vipers, persons who had abandoned all career ambitions in order to offer total subservience to a single person. In doing so, they were allotted authority beyond their station, but at the cost of their agency. They made his skin crawl. The figure who passed through his door, though, was not a liaison at all. In fact, it wasn't anyone he'd ever seen before. It was a man, relatively tall but otherwise nondescript, in a sharp black suit with matching tie over a white shirt. Behind his dark glasses, Yoshihide could just barely make out his eyes, keen and aware, like a raptor. Something about him felt queer. "Director," the man said, extending a hand and complimenting it with a wide grin. His voice was rich and genial, and Yoshihide, caught off guard by it. Welcome to your new station. Sincerest apologies on my delay in getting here. I wanted to come off for my congratulations before you'd broken the place in. But business being what it is, it couldn't be helped. Yoshihira took his hand. It was firm and abrupt, but not inconsiderate. I appreciate the consideration, nonetheless, he said. I have to beg your apology, though. I don't believe we've met. The man helped himself into the chair opposite Yoshihira's desk, and the director followed suit. He paused for a moment, surveying the room. Yes, well, that's where I must apologize. I like to try and get out ahead of things, make inroads as early as I can. Our working relationship is of paramount importance, you see, but my schedule has gotten the better of me again. He tapped the side of his chin with an extended finger. I am the administrator. Think of me as the go-between for directors and overseers, the grease that keeps the wheels moving. I'm here to help facilitate your transition to this new post, as well as to make sure that your interactions with our esteemed O5 Council are as seamless as possible. Yoshihira instinctively raised an eyebrow. Really? I didn't realize such a position existed. The man's smile didn't move an inch. Yoshihira could feel the hair on the back of his arm standing on end. Oh yes, the administrator said. I've been at this for some time now. My job here, aside from ferrying tidings of goodwill down from Overwatch Command, is to ensure a sort of linearity in our ideals. The staff of our foundation, the researchers and task forces, they have their own goals and objectives. There are too many of them to address individually, so we rely on our site directors to maintain that sense of direction. Once you get to this level, there is an expectation of, call it synchronicity. The overseers set the line, the directors are expected to stay within it, and I help to make sure everyone knows where that line is. It is a narrow path, but it's one we all march together. We are, after all, here for the same reason, wouldn't you say? Yoshihira's brow furrowed. I suppose. But hear me, if you would. What reason would you say that is? The administrator placed his hands on the edge of Yoshihira's desk and leaned forward slightly. Containment, Director. We are the keepers of the box. There are things in this world that, as you know, simply should not exist. Were we gods, it would be enough to simply make them vanish, as if they were never there at all. There are some in our ranks who would seek to do just that, to use the mechanisms of man to accomplish a task ordained for God alone. They fail, of course, every one of them. We are not gods, Director. So we must do what we can while we wait for God to act. The irregularities in our world, the things that go bump in the night, we put them into boxes, and then we watch the boxes. We do not discriminate. We've learned too many hard lessons to know how badly that can go. If we do this, we achieve our goal. It is thankless, certainly, and never-ending, but it is important, and it is right. I'm sure you agree. A bead of sweat began to run down Yoshihira's back. He knew the administrator could not see it. But it did not change the fact that he felt as if the man somehow knew it was there all the same. He straightened up and nodded curtly. Indeed, Yoshihira said. That is the work, after all. The administrator sat back in his chair. His smile softened somewhat, but not in a reassuring way. I'm glad to hear it. My job and yours becomes so much simpler when we have a good sense of synergy, he laughed. I hope you'll forgive my corporatism. Old habits die hard. But the truth of the matter remains. If I continue to illuminate the path, and you stay on the path, and your subordinates follow your direction, then we will be a successful unit. All of us. He looked down at his watch. There is my time. Apologies for departing as quickly as I arrived. My schedule is a fickle puppeteer, and I am just another marionette dancing at the end of a rope. He stood, and Yoshihira followed suit. The administrator extended a hand, and Yoshihira took it. The hand was strangely warm. We'll be in touch, Director. As you settle into your new role, I'm excited to see you rise to this new challenge. He turned to leave, but as he opened the door, he stopped and turned back over his shoulder. Just don't forget, containment is our ultimate purpose. At whatever cost, yes, Yoshihira said nothing, but nodded slightly. The administrator grinned, and then closed the door behind him as he left. "You didn't tell me that you were going to be in the city this month," Yoshihira said, a scowl desperately trying to mask his happiness at seeing her face. "You need to be better at communicating your schedule. I could have arranged to have you stay at a nicer hotel." She laughed as she idly poked at her lunch. "You would think after all your hard work to be a director that you could stand to finally relax a little bit." He sighed. "But don't you see, that's how they get you. You dream of freedom, but each new rung on the ladder is another shackle. More responsibilities, more meetings, more phone calls. It never ends. Even now, I have to block out a whole hour to spend time with my inconsiderate daughter." "Inconsiderate?" She turned up her nose and jabbed at him with her fork. "Here I thought I was doing you a favor, getting you out of that stuffy office. If you stay there too long, you're going to end up pickled, or worse." Yoshihira sniggled at that thought. "Pickling might not be the worst outcome. If I'm being honest, it would do wonders for my skin." He paused for a moment, taking her in. She was every bit a picture of her mother, a blessing, considering the alternative. Her laughter was music, and her presence was light. When she was with him, he could almost forget about the burden of his work, the time spent endlessly poring over notes and reports and files. Those thoughts consumed him. But whenever she was near, she seemed to so easily cast him away. She was clever as well, almost too clever. Well, he could not help himself but feel pride in her when the Foundation had come courting for her expertise in exotic high-tension metamaterials. It was cocooned in stifling, suffocating dread. It must have shown on his face, and she frowned. "What's wrong?" she said, surveying him with her mother's eyes. "Are you having indigestion? Do you need a laxative?" He wanted to laugh, but the moment was lost on him. "No, Yusakai. I'm fine. I just worry about you is all. You need to let me know if you're ever in trouble. I can help you out. More now than I've ever been able to before. But I won't know if you need it unless you say something." She snorted. "What is there to say? I have a great job, a comfortable home. I get to work on some of the most fascinating projects I've ever seen in my life. And my father is only a couple hours train ride away. When he can find time for me, that is." This time he laughed, but only a little. "What are you worried about?" He closed his eyes and saw another pair looking back at him from behind dark glasses. "You need to stay aware all the time. This is dangerous work we do, you know. There are always people watching, waiting to take advantage of us in our moments of weakness. We can't afford to be caught off guard." She popped a grape in her mouth and spoke while she chewed. "I have a hard time imagining someone starting trouble with the daughter of a site director, even if she is inconsiderate." He heard her mother's voice again in her words. It was so similar. "It's not just about starting trouble. It's just about being aware. You need to promise me. If you see anything suspicious or hear of anything that makes you uncomfortable, you let me know, all right?" She rolled her eyes. Yes, very well. If it helps you sleep better at night, then I promise. Last thing I need is for you to keel over dead now from the stress." He relaxed for a moment until he looked at her hands. She had picked up a fork and held the tines between her thumb and middle finger. With a firm but gentle motion, she pushed him against the metal, and then metal danced under the pressure of her fingertips. It spread out, connecting with the other tines until they were all a solid piece, and then she pushed it into her thumb. The metal bent backwards like it was soft clay. When she released it, she was holding a spoon. His eyes darted to meet hers, but she was looking across the restaurant, hardly paying attention at all. Panic gripped him in an instant. His hand darted across the table and grabbed the spoon out of her hand, stashing it in his jacket pocket as quickly as he could. She jumped back in alarm, her other hand trying to snap his away. "Hey, what was that for?" she shouted at him. "I'm not finished with my food." "Quiet," he hissed as he frantically scanned around the room. "What have I told you about doing that, daughter, and out in open like this?" She blinked twice, stunned at his sudden turn. "What are you so worried about? It's just a fork and there's nobody around to see it. Saves me the trouble of getting up to get another." "It's not just a fork," he said, his voice quiet and nervous. "It's never just a fork. Don't for a second think that there aren't always people watching. Even if they're not watching you right now, they will be soon. Don't you understand? She grabbed the spoon from his side and the table and glared at him. You worry too much, Father. Nobody cares about a fork or a spoon. It's helpful to me, sure, but it's not important. Dark glasses, piercing eyes. You need to make another promise to me, he said, his voice quivering now. You must promise that you'll never do this again. Now, more than ever, it is important that nobody knows what you... He hesitated. What you are capable of. They can't know. Do you understand me? Her stare could have cut him to his core, just like a mother. Are you worried them finding out I can change things, will disrupt your career progression? Is that what this is, God? Am I that much of an embarrassment to you? His heart broke. He saw her as a child, taking little brass monkeys and turning them into a snake, and then back again. She laughed and looked at him for approval. He had smiled. Why had he smiled? He had to have known better than. Why hadn't he done something sooner? He straightened himself and looked across the table at her. She seemed about to speak, but the indignation caught in her mouth. I need you to promise me, Yoshihide said in short, measured words. You need to promise me that you will give that up forever. It's not about me, Yusukai. It is about your safety. You may feel comfortable now, and you may very well be safe now. But all it takes is the wrong person noticing or saying something to someone else. The only way that you can be safe is if they have no reason to suspect that you're capable of anything other than the great work you do. He paused. I love you, daughter, and I want you to be safe. I'll continue to work to keep you safe, even if I must climb all the way to Overwatch Command to do it. But I need your help. Please, help me. She held still for a moment, as if determining whether or not she wanted to lash out at him again. Then the moment passed, and she relaxed. She smiled a little smile, and reached across to take his hand. He hadn't realized it was shaking until just then. Don't worry, she said to him. Everything will be all right. I'll be all right. Blood coated his hands as he felt hers go cold. Even as she lay dying in the dim light of the headlamps, her eyes saw straight into his soul. She smiled a little smile. Everything will be all right. I'll be all right. Don't worry. Months passed. The days, if they ever had a notion of individuality before, abandoned it entirely now as they blurred together in a ceaseless barrage of new tasks and obligations. He would, at times, laugh at the naivety of his youth, when he had imagined himself rising to the level of site director to have his pick of great and important projects to work on. He had been amongst the best containment specialists when he was younger, the best, some had claimed, and he knew it every bit as well as they did. He saw intricacies and subtleties that the others missed, and knew how to exploit them. He was occasionally able to convince himself that his rise to the chair he sat in now had been of noble reasons, but deep down he knew the truth. Containment is what he did well. But now his time was filled with endless approvals and reviews, inspections and training. Periodically, he would have moments where he was asked his thoughts on a new process, or had a chance to investigate a problem that was troubling his subordinates. Through it all, he began to feel a terrible, gripping thing. This was not the work he should be doing. Pushing papers and sorting files was administrative work. Surely the Foundation had people who could do that. The chair he sat in, the office, the desk. What was it, actually? Was it a position for him to exert influence? Was it a means by which to change the world? Was it a cage? So it was with a mere 3 years into his residency as site director, Yoshihide found himself requested to fly out to a place he knew nothing about at the behest of the overseers. He studied this location as much as he could, but all he gathered was that it was a small, unimportant house deep in the forests of Eastern Europe. Yet the overseers would not have called him for something so meager. There had to be something there that required someone like him, a task that needed his keen intellect and judicious hand. Actual work, he thought. He left within the day. It was, as he had presumed, not much more than a tiny wooden house in the middle of the forest. It sat in a small clearing at the end of a long, narrow drive. The clearing was cleared, and a small stack of firewood sat outside the door of the house. The trees stretched tall in all directions around it, and in the dying light of the day, he almost felt that they were bending in above him, choking off what little sun was left before opening up to a deeper darkness. There was a light on inside, and smoke from the chimney. He entered the house. It was modestly furnished. Wooden furniture, woolen rug, pictures hung on the wall. The most striking thing, aside from the person sitting across from the doorway near the fire, were the many taxidermied heads of animals that filled every other possible inch of wall space. There was not treasured family heirloom or window. Not just taxidermies either. Skulls, in many cases. Some he had never seen before. The animals themselves, whatever was left of them, were strange, eerily magnificent. Deer, elk, ram, wolf, and then skulls and skins of things he could not name. They stared out with glassy black eyes, not at him, not at anything. Then, of course, was the administrator. Yoshihira was almost forgotten his face from their meeting years before, though his words had never been too distant. He was looking into the fire, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He did not speak as Yoshihira entered, but gestured to another chair beside him. The scene was so bizarre, Yoshihira's mind was too busy racing to realize his body was acknowledging the courtesy and sitting down. I realize that my offer may have left you with expectations that are not currently being met, the administrator said. His voice was soft, not nearly so bright and genial as it had been in the day in his office. I apologize for the discourtesy. I had only meant not to raise the concerns of anyone who might intercept the message. This place is, by my own design, not a place that can be so easily followed to. Yoshihira moved to speak, but the words were absent. He had questions, endless questions, and growing concerns, but something in his better nature held his tongue. He distinctly had the feeling as if he was in the presence of something very dangerous and needed to be very careful. A few moments later, the administrator continued. I've been watching your work for some time, Director. You have risen to the challenge of your station, and your staff are dutiful in their fulfillment of the goals of the Foundation. I have no reason to feel anything but satisfaction in your selection to this position. He felt the other man looking at him now. He dared not look back. And yet, the administrator said, I cannot help but feel as if you are not reaching your full potential. I don't mean this as a criticism, of course. The limits of your office are such that perhaps you are not in a position to best carry out the work at which you are the most capable. Would you agree? It was a trap. Yoshihira knew it. He saw the snare and felt the tension humming in the line. But the gnawing inside him suddenly flared, and he saw a long life lived sitting behind that desk, mindlessly rubber-stamping the better work of better men. He was good at what he did, the best, some had claimed. The gnawing consumed his growing apprehension. Yes, he said quietly. The administrator smiled again. That's what I thought. Come with me. Grab a jacket if you have one. It's cold out there tonight. The forest around them was still. The energy of distant cities and all the lights of mankind were foreign to a place like this. None of the noise permeated the tall trees and the dense growth below them. The path they walked on was well maintained, though, and the only sound at all was the soft padding of their shoes on dirt. The administrator carried a lantern, an antique, if you can believe it, he said with a laugh. The light was sufficient to see their path, but little beyond it. The forest was everything. My grandfather always said, hell is dark. The administrator lifted the light up slightly higher. He hated these woods, hated the things in them, hated the dark. He was paralyzed by fear of it. This lantern was his, back where the house was as well. He paused for a moment at the large tree. He ran his hand across its surface. The bark was broken. Something had been by here. An animal, maybe. Something with antlers that had brushed against it. He continued. He only came out here when he needed food for his family. He would hunt, though he loathed it. The best hunting was at dusk, and if he was out too late, well, then there was the dark. Why live in a place like this, then? Yoshihide asked. Surely he could have had somewhere closer to a town. He couldn't see his face, but he knew the administrator was smiling. I asked myself the same question, Director. But then men are drawn to their antithesis, I think. They find comfort in believing they are exposing themselves to something frightful to them. It makes them feel strong. He took a breath. My father said, hell is dying. He didn't mind the dark, embraced it, actually. He was a hunter, you see. Not in the way my grandfather was, out of necessity. My father hunted because he liked it. He enjoyed the chase, enjoyed pitting his wit against the instincts of a beast. He would come home from a hunt, successful or not, with such a look on his face. He's been gone for many years, but I can still see his expression. It was rapture. I think he found religion in these words. He halted, gathered his thoughts, and turned to Yoshihide. But my father realized what you and I both know. The chase is thrilling, no doubt, but the joy is in winning. It's not enough to just follow the beast. A beast can follow a beast. To be able to have a life of something in your hands, well, that's something altogether different, isn't it? That was his work. He turned back to the trail. When I was very young, I remember being in town with my father when a woman came screaming into the square. Her child had gotten lost in the woods, and some manner of creature had found them. A jackal, maybe, or a wildcat, maybe even a great boar. Whatever it was, the child had only just survived the encounter, with survived being a choice word. The beast, had chewed off most of the face and much of the skin on the arms raised to defend itself. The soft meat, though I suppose at that age most of the meat is soft, they had managed to escape and run, and by luck had blindly found their way back to their own home. Can you imagine that, knowing your child is lost in the forest, and then feeling joy at hearing them running back? And then... He broke off, his gaze turned towards the trees around them. The thing that came out of the forest was not her child anymore. Not really. It had been changed by the beast. It was a heaving, wretched thing, one ruined eye staring out in horror from behind a face that was little more than strips of meat, clinging desperately to shattered bone, a mouth that would have screamed if it was not full of blood. A miserable thing. They carried on in silence for a while longer. After a time, the administrator paused and knelt down. He picked up something from the path below them. A tooth. Something severed. He put it in his pocket. My father carved this trail after the child was attacked, he said. It stretches far and wide across these woods. He spent days, months, years studying how the creatures in this forest move throughout it. From his hunting posts, he watched them, and he noted their behavior. He kept extensive records. Truthfully, it was how we spent most of our time together growing up. Together, in silence, up in a tree, watching the beasts move. He held at his hand and moved it around, as if tracing something in his mind. They were blameless, of course. Beasts are just beasts. They can't reason the same way that you and I can. They aren't evil, certainly, but they are dangerous. One of them got a hold of that child, just one, and changed his life forever. I remember seeing it years later, no longer a child, but a ghastly, haunted thing. They died young, as I remembered, but lived long enough to know true agony, not just the pain of their injuries, though I am certain it was severe. No, I believe the greatest pain they felt was the loneliness that followed. They were horrible to look at, and were avoided by neighbors, friends, family. The beast did kill them, in the end. But the dying was not the worst of it. Death is not hell. They came to a fork in the path. The administrator lifted his lantern again, looking in both directions. So my father cut this path. He found that they tended to follow on the edge of cleared spaces, and would follow these trails to wherever they would lead. In his mind, I believed, my father had always intended to just shepherd them away from the town, somewhere deeper into the forest. But this trail is just a box without a lid, Director. It is not enough to put them in a cage if the cage has no door." They turned left at the fork and continued forward. One night he was maintaining this trail and a bear found him. I wonder sometimes if, in his last moments, he regretted simply delaying what had suddenly become inevitable for him. It was not as if he did not enjoy hunting. Maybe he thought this simply was not sporting. I doubt the bear cared either way. He let out a sigh, pausing briefly. "Do you see now, Yoshihira? Do you understand? We are all the children of our fathers. He learned from his father, who learned from his before him, all of them flawed men. My father had vision, but lacked execution. He cut this trail for beasts, knowing that they would get caught in it. But he did not live long enough to realize for himself the true fulfillment of that vision. That's what we are. We are that fulfillment." They came to a clearing. In the dark he saw nothing, but felt something moving in the space in front of him. Something writhing, something foul. The administrator lifted his lantern, and Yoshihira grasped. "And this is the lid on the box." A mountain of corpses, some old, some new, some still wriggling in agony from their butchery, desperately clinging to meager life remaining in them, all of them stacked together in a groaning, heaving pile. Eyes that stared out at nothing, beasts of all shapes and sizes, but not just beasts, men as well, white jackets stained with blood that soaked into the groundwater. Some of them gunned down, perhaps, others cut apart by cruel instruments. A tower of torment and despair, of misery that could not be understood, and across the entire forest not a single sound to be heard. "In the end, we are just problem solvers," the administrator said. His voice felt very far away, and every bit of geniality of the first encounter had long fled. "The problem is the world is sick. For my father, for this town, it was beasts. Beasts that can devour a mother foraging for food. Beasts that can bite and poison you until you long for a quicker death than you are offered. Beasts that tear the soft meat of child's bones. But for us, the beasts are more insidious. They are not always beasts that we can see, but we are careful, and we are patient. We have cut our own path in the woods. We lead them to the clearing, and then we solve the problem." He lowered the lantern, and the light cast over the high grave retreated. "There have been others like you, like me, those who could not handle this knowledge. Presented with the scope of what we must do, they would quake and quiver and beg to return to their meager lives of tepid normalcy. They were a problem, too, in their own way. You are very good at what you do, Yoshihira. There is no questioning that. You are competent. What I want to know is whether you are capable." His voice was barely a whisper now. "This is how we keep the world safe. We complete the work of our fathers. They were men of limited vision. We are not. We will preserve the world. That is our work." He was suddenly in front of Yoshihira. His face was a mask, and behind it was something with intention. Yoshihira felt his skin go cold. "We cannot make exceptions, Director," he said softly. "Exceptions lead to pain and horror. A rabid dog must still be put down, regardless of whether or not it once came when you called. We do not have the luxury to choose. We can only perform the task in front of us." He paused, considering the director. "I asked you once if you were prepared to do the work, and you said you were. You have performed your task. Now, look at what we must do. See what is required for us to keep this world safe. And I ask you again, are you prepared to do the work?" Yoshihira felt panic rising inside him again. His heartbeat quickened. His vision began to swim and shimmer, but something else now rose within him to accompany the anxiety. He would have felt sick, but this new sensation overwhelmed all else. The fear slipped away, and then he thought of nothing but the desk, and the papers, and the chair. Despite himself, he was lost in his own grim desire. Yes, he had never meant anything more in his life. Let's go back then, the administrator said. I have something I need you to do. They turned back down the trail. If Yoshihira had been aware of anything other than the sea of thoughts he was lost in, he may have noticed the administrator staring at him from behind. His skin may have prickled at the malice radiating off of him. He might have felt the tension in the line. Act 2. The Path of Swords. In his daydream, between the long hours of work, Yoshihira pushed a cart up a hill. He's 8 years old again, sitting on the outskirts of his village. The wind brushes past his face as the clamour of the construction rings out around him, reverberating past the howls of the rushing air. Caked around his legs, mud bubbles and crusts into a thick layer, the viscous substance arresting his movement, but only slightly. He trudges along, grinning, watching the workers busy around him. He's not old enough to understand what they're building yet. It doesn't matter to him. What does matter, and what utterly captivates his attention, is the cart, carrying piles of dirt far beyond the skyline. He watches them push the dirt along the tracks off into the distance every day after school. It's the first thing he does as soon as he gets home. One day, as the tall men before Yoshihira laugh and work, curiosity gets the better of him. He hops down from the rock he sits on and stumbles towards them past the piles of wood and steel stacked neatly into clusters. The two notice his approach, and the taller one, a man of darker complexion than his companion, bends down to meet him. "Hey there," the man says, smiling. "Are you lost, little guy?" Yoshihira blinks several times, getting the sun out of his eyes, before pointing to the cart. He takes a few moments to find the words he wants to say, but he eventually seizes them. "I want to push the cart." The man turns to his friend with a smirk that can only be understood with the retrospection of adulthood. After a moment's pause, in one swift motion, he rises to his feet and waves his hands towards it. "Well, come along then. This cart isn't going to push itself." Yoshihira can hardly contain his excitement as he clambers up to the cart, right between the two men who have now assumed position. The sun shines warmly on him, the rays casting their dull heat, as they began to count 1, 2, 3, and push the cart with all their might. Without a moment's delay, it begins to roll forward, inch by inch at a time, until Yoshihira can hardly keep up with the gathering momentum. As it continues to roll, his footing loosens, and Yoshihira falls, and jerks himself to attention, catching himself. The room spins around him momentarily before his gaze refocuses and drifts towards the ink and paper littered across his desk. The sun drapes light over the room in distinct, lazy streaks, illuminating the countless bits and pieces of paperwork that occupy his time, day in and day out. And in the center of the mess, in the eye of the storm, the 001 document beckons towards his mockingly, waiting for his inevitable intention. It takes him just slightly too long to realize that he is not alone. Beyond the door of his office, in the vestibule where his secretary lies, a familiar face stares calmly through him, waiting for the first signs of recognition. It takes Yoshihira no more than a quarter of a second before he puts his eyes to her face. His grip tenses. "Administrator?" The man rises perfunctly and walks in the way that betrays no underlying agenda for his impromptu visit. The light casts off his skin as he approaches, but it does not glow with warmth. The same pale, cold features are still as discernible as when they were bathed in darkness, no new life breathed into them. He sits and wastes no time. "I hope I did not arrive at an opportune moment, Director Yoshihira. I recognize that you have been under much duress since our last encounter." The director glares cautiously at the man. "Your presence is certainly not helping in that regard." The two sit in silence briefly. The administrator does not grace him with a smile anymore, the stone complexion of his face remaining wholly inert. "I apologize for that. I merely came to inquire about your progress on SCP-001 containment case." The silence continues now, as Yoshihira articulates his thoughts. If there's tension palpable in the air, the administrator doesn't seem to feel it. "I intend to begin the containment efforts tomorrow." "Now," the administrator smiles. his perfect white teeth peeking out from behind the lightly lifted folds of his face. "That is the correct response, Director. Perhaps there's still hope for you yet." Yoshihide grunts, but doesn't reply. He's not sure if it's meant to be a joke. "Regardless, I eagerly anticipate your inevitable solution to our ongoing, problem." The administrator casts a forlorn glance down at the epicentral paper, nestled deep in the mess of the mahogany desk. "The particularities of this anomaly continue to elude our organization, and if there's any hope in the solution, it'll be through you." A pause. "Yoshihide." The manner of enunciation makes him shiver in place. He tries not to show any sign of discomfort to the facsimile of a man before him. "I appreciate the sentiment, Administrator." Another off-putting smirk, and his hand extends towards the document. The document. He picks it up and turns a few pages, then he begins to read. SCP-001 refers to an anomalous corpse hanging within the containment chamber at Site-01, entrapped within a cocoon of silk threads. SCP-001's cocoon has thus far proven impenetrable. Attempts to damage the exterior have proven futile. Blood continuously flows from between the threads on its body, at a rate of approximately 5 liters per day. SCP-001's primary anomalous effect occurs at random, at an average incidence of once per day. A silk thread with an identical composition to SCP-001's cocoon will manifest around the middle finger of a member of the Foundation personnel. This individual is labeled SCP-001-A. Over the course of 48 to 72 hours, the silk will continue to coil around SCP-001-A, extending from the location of manifestation. The speed of the silk's growth varies between subjects, though typically immobilizes them within 24 hours. Once SCP-001-A has been wholly cocooned within the silk, it will begin to constrict around them. This process lasts approximately 3 hours, during which blood will begin to seep from between the strands at increasing rates. Once SCP-001-A expires, the cocoon will become inert, and the silk will lose its anomalous properties. Thus far, over 85 Foundation personnel have been terminated in this manner. He speaks with almost no emotional intonation, the gruesome information being relayed with near-perfect poise. Yoshihide, for that matter, does not react either. He recognizes such treachery would not be tolerated by this man. The administrator quietly places the document back down and reestablishes eye contact. "Mr. Yoshihide," he starts, "what do you make of it?" It's a test, one that Yoshihide is perfectly prepared to answer. He can feel the fire in his eyes glowing hot as the portrait forms in his head. "All reasonable manner of conventional penetration have likely proven futile in breaking into SCP-001's cocoon," he begins. "So primary investigation into SCP-001 should first and foremost focus on mitigating its effects in the short term." Yoshihide pauses, then continues. "Has amputation been considered?" A smile blossoms on the administrator's face. It appears genuine this time. "Yes, though no one has thus far been willing to try it." "Then I'll be the first." It's a statement of fact, not a question, something that changes in the air, but Administrator's smile does not falter. "You will be indeed. Very good, Director. I look forward to seeing your progress report next week." And with no further comments, the administrator lifts himself from his seat and reaches over for a handshake. Yoshihide grabs his cold, lifeless husk in his hand, and they shake. Then he is gone, briskly whisked away as though never present, as though the meeting was nothing more than an ephemeral dream. Yoshihide stands, processing for several seconds longer. The sun's beams constrict silently in ensuing moments, before disappearing entirely. He leans back, collapsing towards his chair, and lands explosively in the mud, splashing the brown across his clothes and face. The men stop their pushing and turn back, and begin to chuckle as Yoshihide looks up. Seeing them laugh, he begins giggling too, and quickly pushes himself to his feet, though slips again, prompting more laughs. "Say, kid," the second man chimes in, "why don't you take a break? You've been working very hard, and you're covered in mud now. Hop on into the cart and we'll push you." Anticipation overwhelms Yoshihide as he gingerly attempts to climb the minecart's sides. The first man helps push him up, and soon he sits upon the mound of dirt, overlooking the world from a bird's-eye perspective. He can see farther than he could ever on the ground. The boy resolves, in an instant, to never again step down from the cart, a fleeting and ephemeral promise among the countless others that define childhood. Seated firmly on top of the piles, the two men begin to push once more. He's small enough that he can sit tightly behind the rim of the top of the cart as it jostles through increasingly rural countryside. So he simply enjoys the vibrations of the ride as they flow through his body. The wind begins to pick up, and Yoshihide becomes acutely aware that the cart is now quite high upon the hill, even further than before. Turning, Yoshihide sees the men are, not quite struggling, but they're huffing and breathing quite deep, and the cart gains more altitude. He worries that he's adding too much weight, but his fear is quickly abated as the slope of the hill curves closer towards the flat plain. Slowly, the cart levels and stops. The men take a breather. From up here, high upon the highest hill Yoshihide has ever seen in his life, he can gaze upon all the trees and houses and roads and people from far, far away. His eyes are wider than the wheels on his royal carriage, and his mouth stands agape at the sight. Keen Volander overtakes him. After but a few minutes of this ephemeral moment, the cart jostles slightly. Yoshihide spots the first man's hand gripping the edge of the cart. He's smiling now, widely, as he begins to speak. "All right, kid, you're going to want to hold tight for this next part." It takes a few seconds for the young boy to register what he means before the cart begins to lull forward on the track. The realization slams into him, and he grips onto the side of the cart just before it begins to roll down the hill. Slowly, at first, then faster, then faster. He wants to yell, but the fear arrests any scream in his throat. The minecart barrels and barrels and barrels, faster and faster and faster, until at breakneck speeds. It slams down, severing the finger in one clean motion. The man screams, although the wound is cauterized instantly. Although the doctor's entire arm has been numbed with anesthetics, he still screams. Yoshihide knows better than to ask him, though he still wonders why. It is, after all, to ultimately save his life. As the man clutches his hand in mental anguish, Yoshihide studies the severed digit. Wrapped tight around the joint is a silvery strand of silk, digging into the now lifeless flesh of the finger. He flexes it in his hand, feeling how it bends in his palm, rubbing the cauterized portion in curiosity. It's still warm to the touch. He shakes his head, then goes to work. It takes several attempts, but after consistent pressure in the precise places, the strings begin to come loose and soon slides off. He discards the finger. At least half of his assumption is correct. He begins work on the other. Yoshihide stretches the thread out, stringing it through the finger guillotine his team hastily assembled for this particular project. He does not hesitate as he turns it on, sending it careening down onto the thin white strand. It clunks against the metal, then lifts. The string remains undamaged. The blade is chipped. Yoshihide's assumptions are correct, at least for the next 3 days. He turns and studies the man still clutching his hand in a psychosomatic shock. He's crying now, sitting upright, curled on the floor, hyperventilating. Director Yoshihide briskly walks towards him, crouches down, and establishes eye contact. "What is your name?" he asks. It takes the man several moments to process the absurdity of the question before snapping back to reality. "Zenichi Naigu, Doctor, sir." "Let me see your hand." The doctor hesitantly reaches out. Yoshihide examines the hand idly, as though this was all normal. He spends several seconds before he spots it. On the ring finger, a thin silver strand beginning to swirl, digging into the flesh. Interesting. Yoshihide looks back up at the man. "I apologize, Dr. Zenchi. It seems as though the procedure was a failure. I recommend getting your affairs in order within the next 24 hours. It doesn't take any time to witness the doctor's reaction, but he can take a guess at what he's feeling. Shock, Horror. The realization that one doesn't even have time left. But it doesn't bother the director to break the news. He had to do it countless times, after all. The administrator's voice rings in his ears. Are you prepared to do the work? He shivers. As he exits the chamber, he nabs the now separated thread and walks into the observation deck. An assistant stands at attention. He doesn't need to say a word as he hands the string off, the associate understanding precisely what to do. They turn and walk away towards the door and push it open, just as another person pushes past them inside. Not just any person, of course. His daughter. He hasn't seen her in weeks. He'd been too busy. She strides in, not informally, but not as clinically as he taught her. There's an air of softness to her walk that he half thinks to rebuke her for, but he swallows the complaint in his throat. She shouldn't be here. Hi, Dad, she says. You shouldn't be here, he replies. It's intended to be a state of fact. Instead, it's more of a reassurance. But I don't mind your company. He curses himself for betraying his love for her, then curses himself for cursing himself. I know, she says. There's a somber tone in her voice. I just wanted... A scream finishes her sentence for her, reverberating through the chamber. She yelps at the sound. Yoshihide already knows where it's coming from. Naigu. The shock must have worn off. He turns to him, screaming from his despair, clutching his hand. But then snaps back around to Yuzuki. She's looking at him with an inscrutable expression, one that he imagines he sports often himself, one that certainly did not befit her mother. It takes her several seconds to find the words, but they arrive eventually at their own. Did you do this? He doesn't know how to respond, but he responds anyway. I did. The expression turns dour. Why? It was necessary. He clicks his tongue, weighing the scale of love and secrecy in his heart. They were not, he finds, competing. I cannot tell you why. I'm sorry. His daughter pauses. There is a brief tension in the air, and Yoshihide realizes with growing trepidation that he was being tested, a test that has already been thoroughly failed. The scorn on her face is palpable and cuts through his heart like a dagger. She hesitates for several seconds. Their minds are in sync, and she knows what he knows, neurons exchanging signals with no medium in between. Then, without saying a word, Yuzuki turns and walks away, not even as much as throwing a furtive glance in his direction. The doorknob morphs under her touch as she pulls, then slams the door behind her. He puts aside everything, and for a brief fraction of a moment, the kayfabe is broken. Yoshihide wants nothing more than to leave this accursed place, to cherish the only family he has left, to live out his remaining days doing anything but this. But as he reaches for the door, his eyes treacherously drift. He sees Naigu, sobbing now, hunched in a corner, contemplating his fate in the fourth stage of grief. His eye is caught, though, by the scarlet red stain streaked across the guillotine's bottom plate, a trail of blood that could not have been caused by the cauterized wound. The facade returns, and the Foundation's tendrils once again take root in his mind. He can apologize for her later, for now he approaches Dr. Zenchi, who looks ahead with hollow eyes. Yoshihide once again crouches, then speaks. Mr. Naigu, what is your blood type? The man doesn't respond for a beat. Then focus returns to his face and his gaze tilts until it upturns sharply, slowing at the end of a perfect curve. Yoshihide is shivering, utterly terrified. The sounds of the forest, originally awe-inspiring, now reverberated in an alien echo as he came to the realization that these men did not know him, and he did not know them. They were strangers, and although he had seen them push the cart every day along the track, he never knew just how far they traveled, just how far their jobs made them go. The two approached the cart, smiling and laughing, apparently oblivious. Yoshihide hopes to his reaction. He doesn't dare speak up or share his thoughts. His heart races in its place. Without asking, the men begin to push once more. He begins to worry about where they're taking him. What lies at the end of the track? How far are they going to go? Are they going to take him back? Is he going to be able to go back? Nothing but anxiety occupies Yoshihide's thoughts for the next 3 hours. The men talk between the two of them about trivial matters, far above Yoshihida's concern, almost as though he didn't exist. Perhaps they've even forgotten he was there, as quiet as he is. It would not be the first time. After a long while, too long of a while, the men stop pushing the cart once more, wiping sweat from their brows and dusting dirt off their briefs. There is still an endless stretch of track leading off beyond the tree line. So the question of why they stopped remains in the air, until one of the men pulls out a wrapped sandwich from his pocket. He turns to Yoshihide, smiling. "You didn't pack any lunch, did you, little guy?" Yoshihide shakes his head. They both chuckle. "Well, here, have some of mine. It's turkey." They help him down from the piles of dirt, and he sits next to them as they begin to share jokes, smiling, laughing amongst themselves and with him. They're jovial, peaceful, even. They appreciate his company, which begins to soothe Yoshihide's gnawing concerns, silencing them in one long, fell swoop. He begins giggling and telling his own jokes, and they laugh. And he doesn't know whether they are just humoring him or if they actually find him funny. But it matters not for the young boy. In due time, they finish their meals, each satisfied. With their strength rejuvenated, the men begin to stretch and get up, heaving and sighing as they prepare to continue their own work. Yoshihide, perhaps anachronistically, wonders if they know how important their work is, how important it will be. But he hops from the stone they were eating their lunch upon and quickly runs up to the cart once more. The first man turns to him, smirking again. "Ready to keep pushing, little guy?" Yoshihide beams, his spirit fully revived. "Yes." The man laughs again. He laughs a lot. "All right, then let's go." Yoshihide once again takes position behind the cart. Now he's less concerned and more curious to see where the track ends. With the experience of pushing it once before, he steadies himself, preparing, and with a single, powerful shove, the director throws the door to his office open, thudding it against the back wall, reverberating through the room. The space is empty. He walks past the dusting bookshelves and the streaks of sunlight beaming down onto the floor and circles the lone desk in the back center to get to his computer. With a click, it powers up, and he sits whilst tapping his hands in anticipation. When the screen eventually turns on, Yoshihide promptly navigates to the intranet communications. They all call it email, anyway, and sees the notification he's been waiting days for. It's a direct line from the O5 Council, with several attachments. A good sign. He opens it, trembling, and soon his lips blossom into a smile. Finally, the Council has approved his request for a complete release of information pertaining to SCP-001's victims, based on his progress thus far. His eyes scan the list, and he is overjoyed to find a plethora of information. Every victim's names, ages, dates of birth, their employment information, record infractions, salaries, their familial ties, the deepest secrets and the greatest fears. A list of everything they've ever eaten from the moment they stepped foot into Foundation custody. A list of every time they had sex and with whom. Utterly, totally comprehensive in every regard. For most, this would be too much information. For Yoshihide, he is in his element. Immediately he checks his first hunch. It doesn't take more than a few keystrokes before the list is being filtered by blood type. The director waits patiently for several seconds before the columns and rows neatly organize themselves. 73% of SCP-001's victims are Type B. It's not perfect, but it's vastly overrepresented in the data, to the point that, while it doesn't blow the case wide open, Yoshihide considers it a success. He glances at the bottom of the page and is morbidly bemused to see Dr. Zenichi amongst the list of dead. Another statistic, but an invaluable one at that. Next he checks the dates of death. The entries order themselves at his command, and he plots them into a simple graph. Much to his surprise, it's not quite linear. It's speeding up, very slowly, but thoroughly. It's no surprise now that the administrator was so eager for Yoshihide to begin work as soon as possible. Beyond the daily deaths, anyway. The pencil taps against his chin. He checks the CRV levels. Their averages are lower slightly, He checks position, site, and salaries. No patterns there. Cause of death doesn't vary at all, and he knew that already. But, it's a hunch, but he checks the list of past incidents. Foundation average is around 40% for their known major infractions to the Code of Conduct. And this list turns up at around 80%. That's another significant deviation, and it begins to reinforce his theory. He quickly glances through them. Embezzlements frequent enough to be eyebrow-raising, but Yoshihira doesn't jump to conclusions. Very likely that the Foundation just got a lot of it across the board. Some notable ones catch his eye, though. An attempted defector to the GOC, a woman using an inanimate anomaly against protocol, a man leaving his friend behind during a containment breach to save himself. They are connected by an underlying thread, which Yoshihira begins to see. An outline forms, and his hunch becomes slightly more than a hunch. His gaze drifts. On his desks, beside several scattered papers and manila folders, the silk from the severed finger floats in a glass container, slowly filling with blood. Type B blood specifically, with no genetic matches he can find. He pulls closer to it and watches it swirl slowly in a circle, bobbing up and down. Carefully, Yoshihira opens the transparent cylinder and plucks the string out. His fingertip stained red, and they shimmer as he holds the thread up to the light. Then his other hand grasps the bottom edge, pulling it taut, and then pulling it further than that, as hard as he can. Several moments pass before, eventually, he gently places it back in the pool of blood and seals it inside. He mutters to himself, "Reassuring, I suppose." After several seconds further, he turns and begins writing a requisition request for a member of the D-Class faculty. With the emphasis on the particular behavior patterns of Type B blood, he'll have to wait at least a day for the department to get back to him. He sighs and leans back in his chair as he hits send, ignoring the overwhelming inferno of emails from countless people, some of which, to Yoshihira's dread, shares his name. He knows he should read them. He knows he should just talk to her. But he worries if he involves her at all, if he gets her into the sights of the other man watching over his shoulder. In spite of the cloud in his head, Yoshihira pushes aside the thoughts and allows himself a moment of respite from the work, taking in the brown and gold furnishings of the site director's office. The peace feels fleeting, as though he were a sailor riding along a clear sky, with thunder and lightning sounding off in the horizon. Lingering dread thus interferes with his break. He turns off his computer, pushes himself off his chair, and walks towards the door. He grabs its handle, and with a great force, the cart is off once more. For the next several hours, as Yoshihira alternates between sitting on and pushing the minecart, as they laugh and talk and sweat and just exist, the sun inches its way across the sky. The brilliant blue of the sky dwindles into a murky mix of red, orange, and yellow beams. The twilight encroaches, and none of them seem to mind or care, caught up in the excitement of play and work. Until suddenly the atmosphere shifts, and the cart comes to a slow, final stop. The men glance at each other mid-conversation. A silent pack, strung, extending from between each other. A communication known only through context. "What's wrong?" Yoshihira asks. They turn down to him, the little boy pushing alongside them with a gentle smile. The first man put his hands on his knees. "We are at the end of the track now, Yoshihira." The boy blinks and glances behind the cart. Sure enough, there is no more track extending into the horizon. But there's nothing here. All that accompanies the trio is a large plot of uneven land, holes haphazardly filled with dirt. "Do you guys fill in the holes?" The second man smiles. "We sure do. Our job is to make sure this whole path is nice and well filled for a government project. But we've had to go a bit slower today, and our shift is coming to an end soon, so we'll probably continue filling it tomorrow." Yoshihiro feels disappointed that there was nothing at the end of his arduous journey. Still, he beams proud of his accomplishments. "Can I see you tomorrow?" The first man replies before his friend can. "Of course, but you need to get back home. It's getting late. We don't want your parents to get mad, do we? He gasps. He forgot his parents don't know where he is. They're going to be mad if he comes home too late. The man points and continues. If you keep following the tracks, you'll get back to where you started. It's almost perfectly straight line. So if you walk near it, you'll make it home safe and sound. Yoshihide steps forward a few waddling steps, then glances back. Behind the men, the sun beams outwards, surrounding the pair in a brilliant orange glow. Clouds streak across the sky, which now begin to turn a darkish blue. If wonders if, all these years later, they remember him still. He waves goodbye, and with no time to lose, Yoshihide turns and sees his daughter close to his office door with a firm click. He didn't notice her come in. The office, now only illuminated by fluorescence in the dead of night, is littered with discarded papers and experimentation tools haphazardly strewn about. Yoshihide's head was cemented firmly down towards the final experiment proposal. Halfway done with drafting, along with a document outlining a firm hypothesis for the mechanics behind SCP-001-A selection and the feasibility of permanent containment. He was so absorbed he had, apparently, missed her calling his name several times. They stare at each other now. They haven't spoken once since the day in the lab. That day when she turned and left without a word all those months ago. He notices she's holding a bag. He glances, but reaffixes his gaze to her face. She stares at him. Father? A single word strikes him like a bullet. She's never called him father before. Never with such a tone of trepidation. Never with such a sadness in her voice. Yuzuki, he replies weakly. She winces. Of course she does. He steps out from his own body, and he can see himself for who he is to her. At this precarious moment, a maniac, desperate for promotion, willing to forsake everything for a chance at power. A man working himself to the bone to meet a deadline, telling himself it's for the greater cause. A man who doesn't even have time to answer an email for his daughter. He can see a perfect reflection of himself in her eyes, and he hates what he sees, what he's become to her. Yuzuki, his daughter, his only living family left, approaches his desk. The bag falls to the floor gently with a thump, and Yoshihide's curiosity rises again. But he doesn't say anything. He knows he's been given a final chance, given one last test. This time, he knows it's coming. This time, he's prepared. This time, he does not plan to cut the thread. She sighs and folds her arm into her lap. They stare at each other once more, the connection from the lab briefly re-established. The lightning rekindled, the synapses reconnecting, and then she begins. You've changed. Yoshihide looks down at her folded hands, pretending to find the right words to express how he feels. He swallows the gut feeling slamming to his chest, the ego he has built around himself and his work flowing down into his stomach. He looks back up sadly. I have. There's another crackle of electricity between them, and this time it ignites something, only an ember. You've lost yourself to your work. He swallows his dread. I have. You've lost all of your faith in the world. He swallows his discontentment. I have. She shudders, inhaling sharply. You've almost lost me. He swallows his pride. But not yet. Yuzuki closes her eyes, exhaling softly. No, not yet, she says. You haven't lost me yet. Yet. He lets the word hang momentarily. She doesn't know the truth, but she's very close to it, regardless. She was always smart like that. Yoshihide sighs. And yet. The preamble is now concluded, the first hurdle passed. There's a tension that softened, and yet hardened simultaneously. The fear of dismissal has been overcome, the Sisyphean peak rolled over. She knows he's still in there, somewhere. All there remains now is a father and a daughter, ready to present their souls bare to one another, grievances aired thoroughly. Without fear of tacit rejection, both of them now prepared to deal with the hard part. Yuzuki continues, and yet, you're still locking yourself in here, away from the world. You're still dedicated to your work above everything else, above your friends, above your family, above yourself, above me. A pause. And She doesn't want to say you've changed again, because she's now realizing that he hasn't really changed. The symptoms were always present, just magnified now. She struggles to find the right words to express what she sees, what she thinks of him. Yoshihide finishes for her. "I've become a husk." She looks up at him suddenly again, her eyes wide, the eyes of a mother, the fire ignited deep down. You're right. I have lost myself to my work. I've poured all of myself out into a blood-filled vessel." He gestures briefly to the twine floating in a nearly full container of blood on his desk. "Metaphorically. And I know I've utterly destroyed my soul and my body for this job." She tenses. "But..." He closes his eyes. "But it's all been for you, Yuzuki. Everything I've done has been for you, all of it. There isn't a day that hasn't gone by where I'm not thinking of you." She tenses further, squinting. "But..." He blinks. There's no further buts. Yoshihide flinches before his daughter's hands even hit the table. Tears leak out against her will. "But you've refused to even speak with me. You've refused to take any time out of your schedule to show your daughter that you love her. You've suffocated me my whole life, ever since Mom died, and then you disappeared as soon as you found a game to play on a grander scale." He sinks on every level, his shoulders scrunched in response. Her grievances run deep, and he realizes, only now, he realizes that. She draws back her hands and sinks into her own chair. She didn't mean to go that far. She whispers, "You've abandoned me." He doesn't know what to say. She's right, he realizes, and from her perspective, her grief is wholly valid. He is an antagonist in her story, even if he knows it was for good cause. For her. Yoshihide looks up at her hard features, remembering all the times he fought with her mother in that instance, then turns his head down in shame. He's tearing up too now. "You're right, Yuzuki. You're right. I'm so sorry. It was never my intention to hurt you. Not now. Not ever." At some point he lost track of what hurdle of the test he was on, as the feelings overtook him. He suspects she lost track too. But a change in the way they breathe tells him that whatever hurdle they were on now has just passed, and the test is approaching its final crescendo. She takes a second to calm herself, collecting the tears back into her eyes, then continues, "I need you to prove that to me." He knows what's coming. He swallows his anxiety. "I'm not stupid," she says. "I know whatever it is you're containing has to be contained. It's a dangerous, probably powerful artifact of some kind. I won't ask you to stop your work. I won't even ask what it is. But I need you to promise me, to swear to me that, at the very least, it won't come at the cost of everything else. That you'll put time aside for me, and for your friends, and for yourself." Yuzuki pauses again, allowing the reality to soak in, the final veil of emotional filtration lifting from their faces. Fear is palpable in hers. "I'm worried about you, Dad. I love you." The phrase feels artificial, but he knows the sentiment is still genuine. To love is to be loved, to change is to be changed. His wife had once told him that. He had not forgotten. Yoshihide folds his hands into his lap and bites his lip. She is not asking for much. He doesn't even have to abandon the work, have to abandon his crowning achievement in order to placate her. And he is not an unreasonable man. And she knows this. And he knows she knows this. There is no reason for him to deny her the single consolidation, the singular reassurance. He realizes he is staring down at the experiment paper. He sees what he's written, and then he resolves himself to love his daughter above all else. The fire now flows through his veins, his hands ball into gentle fists, and he can feel his face flush with life once more. He doesn't need to be a slave to his work. He can resolve himself, force himself if necessary, to put aside the aesthetics of functionality and purposefulness, to become a human being again, of flesh and blood, to see the beauty in mundanity once more. He turns up to tell her he loves her. He stops. His blood, mere seconds prior burning hot, now runs ice cold. His face pales. and he begins to sweat. Yuzuki blinks at him, then realizes he's not looking at her. She turns, heart pulsing in her chest, and comes face to face with... "Miss Yuzuki," the administrator says, "I don't believe that we've had the pleasure of meeting." Any warmth left in the room dissipates instantly. The administrator stands in the doorway of the office, smiling vacantly at the pair in front of him with his hands closed over one another. Yoshihide immediately stands on his feet, and Yuzuki glances back at him briefly before returning her eyes to the stranger. "We haven't, no." Though one moves, the man smiles. "I am the administrator of the SCP Foundation. The authority vested in me is quite grand. I speak with the authority of the O5 Council. To put it bluntly, I am the one whom your father directly answers to." She doesn't know how to respond. Truthfully, Yoshihide doesn't know either. But he can't let him interfere. The situation is too precarious, and he knows several critical wires are crossed. Yoshihide glares at the administrator, then clears his throat. "We are in the middle of something important. Can this wait?" The administrator smiles. "Most certainly not, considering it is pertinent to the situation at hand. I have full knowledge of what happens within these walls, and sometimes," he turns to Yuzuki, who flinches under his malicious gaze, "I can have some knowledge of what will happen." And then he takes a step forward, and then another, slowly. His gaze is affixed to her, and her breathing quickens as he approaches meticulously, as though stepping through a minefield. Somehow, through this impossible weight, Yuzuki asks, "Are you the one keeping my father here, tying him down?" The administrator smiles again. He's doing that a lot, to Yoshihide's terror, but does not slow his achingly slow march. "I am. Your father is in charge of the containment of SCP-001, the most important anomaly our organization needs to contain. You understand, then, why he has no time for you, yes?" Her expression morphs into a mix of fear and fury. "It's quite rude to listen in on other people's conversations." "Your father," he chuckles, "your father is the most important man in the Foundation, besides me." "What?" "He is well on his way to becoming an O5 Council member himself. There's a vacant seat, you see, and I'm keen on getting skilled people into places where they're needed." He is only met with silence and panicked breathing, so the administrator continues, "Communications monitoring is sometimes necessary, as there are occasional rogue elements that require a amendment." Yuzuki steps back. Yoshihide sees a shimmer in the air as the administrator reaches out a hand towards her, almost as if to grab and rip her apart with sheer will. His face is resolute. Yoshihide's eyes go wide, wider than he's ever stretched them. He knows what she's about to do. He knows that. "No, no!" "Yuzuki!" he shouts, before the world rips into several threads, separating the truth from the false, from the true in a stunning, red-hot wave of plasmatic distortion to reality. Bluing out in several layers from her in all directions, everything flies everywhere, and an unreal becomes real, cracks shattering, and tearing, and morphing, and then... everything snaps back into place, entropy reversing sickeningly fast, like an omelette reverting back into an egg in a blink. And Yuzuki is thrown onto the desk with a deafeningly loud crash. The blood-filled container knocks onto the floor and shatters, drenching Yoshihide in blood type B. She screams in pain, a horrific howl that hurts his very soul to hear. The administrator stands motionless, watching her with no expression, his hand now tucked by his side. It all happens in a single moment. Before Yoshihide can process everything that occurred, reality crashes down in an instant, and he pulls to run towards his daughter, before being yanked back by someone who most certainly was not behind him a second ago. He realizes with horror that his hands are, quite literally, tied. He looks up. The administrator is staring down at Yuzuki as several guards flood the room, stepping around the now burning papers and melted appliances. She turns around weakly and locks eyes with the man whose untorn reality. Her face is filled with pure terror, his with passive indifference. Yoshihide recognizes that the guards have brought with them a Scranton reality anchor, but it couldn't have been here a second ago. The administrator sighs. All anomalies must be contained, Yoshihide. I've told you this before, no? Bastard, Yoshihide snarls. This isn't what I agreed to. If he heard him, the administrator didn't seem to react. He turns to the guards binding Yoshihide's daughter. Take her to the retrofitted containment cell in Site 02. She'll do for Rashomon. She groans and sobs in violent fits as they restrain her. Yoshihide spouts endless curses and obscenities as they finish. And as they yank her back out towards the door, her panic focuses, and her vision narrows back onto a single anchor in her life. The administrator watches her with passing interest. She sobs, and he winces, Dad! Yoshihide struggles wildly now, desperately, futilely. It's no use. He can't reach her. He can't touch her anymore. Yuzuki, he screams, tearing up his throat. Yuzuki! And then, with one last click of the door, she's gone. Silence deafens the room. He crumples onto the floor. Several more empty, aching moments passed, with the administrator turned towards the door. Then the knots around Yoshihide's arms come undone in a practiced motion, and the last guard wordlessly salutes and walks out through the door. Now, only he and the administrator, arms behind his back, remain. There's a hoarse, little laugh. Yoshihide wonders if he's gone insane with grief, but he realizes quickly that he's not the one laughing. The administrator turns and smiles warmly. I apologize for the dramatics, Yoshihide. You must understand that sacrifice is necessary for containment sometimes. Yoshihide spits at the man, and his saliva lands squarely on the administrator's heels. He doesn't react, but he continues. It occurred to me that moment, as you screamed for your daughter's return, as you made a fool of yourself, that you and I have quite a differing perspective on what means to contain something. Yoshihide doesn't grace the thing in front of him with a response any longer. He continues, regardless. I've already told you my perspective. Containment is for the purpose of keeping the beasts along the path, to maintain normalcy, to ensure the creatures in the dark no longer go bump in the night, to prevent that child from being maimed again, whether by animal or man, a worthily, selfless cause. The administrator tilts his head and smiles again. I fucking hate that grin. But you see things differently. Containment isn't a means to an end. It is an end in and of itself, a work of art, a portrait. He tosses the idea in his head almost jovially. You're an artist, and SCP-001 is your masterpiece. It's both pitiful, but also mesmerizing. A perspective I've never seen before. No wonder you are unique amongst your peers. I truly do look forward to the final act of your performance. Yoshihide swallows, the dread open on his face like a book. They both do not say anything for several seconds, an opaque wall raised between their minds and intentions. And then, suddenly, the administrator turns and walks briskly to the door. He stops before opening it, turning his head back. As an O5 council member, you have the ability to exempt anomalies from the containment if you believe them to be beneficial to our mission. Necessary sacrifices. There is only one path for you to reach that position, you understand? He swallows everything. I understand, sir. Very good, the administrator smiles. Very, very good. Perhaps the story shall have a happy ending. And he is gone. Just as before. Nothing remains round the colossal wreck. The office is an inferno, but Yoshihide doesn't complain. He takes stock of his surroundings. Everything is either burnt or melting or coated in ash. His papers, if they are still intact, are thrown everywhere in a chaotic pattern. The glass containing the thread is shattered, and the blood has seeped into his clothes and onto the floor. He spots the spider silk and gently places it within the coat pocket. He doesn't expect to wash up anytime soon anyways. His desktop is utterly destroyed. He'll have to request a new one. No. Most likely the administrator is already preparing him one. They could easily finish the job themselves. But Yoshihide knows that he is the one that's going to complete the work. That's all he can do now. Downwards, Yoshihida's eyes drooped. If he had any more room for shock today, it would be well spent on his daughter's bag, still seated next to the chair she was sitting in moments ago. His hands tremble, not from fear, but from weakness. He reaches down and lifts the bag from the floor, seating it down on the chair with an gnawing feeling of trepidation. The folds are cast aside, and he reaches in, pulling the singular object from its hidden wrapper and out into the open in a single, swift motion. In his hands, Yuzuki's toy monkey sits, melted from reality warping nearly beyond recognition. She was going to give it back to him. Yoshihide, dizzying, turns and breaks into a panic sprint. The sky slowly turns darker and darker as the sun sets over the horizon, its ferocious flames quelled by the oncoming night. Yoshihide shivers as the air around him begins to cool, his light clothes, designed for the hot weather, doing nothing to protect him from the elements. Wind slips on the breeze past him, and he shuts his eyes, trembling as he runs. It's been a long time since he's been alone like this, by himself. He has never had to navigate in the city at night on his own, let alone in a forest. Still, the tracks of the minecart feel familiar beneath his feet, and he doesn't feel desperate, even if he's scared. He knows, eventually, the tracks will lead him home, and this will be nothing more than a daydream, a bad memory. Dubois. As he runs, the twilight turns to dusk, and the dusk to evening. It becomes totally dark. Even while following the narrow trail, the track feels impossibly long, and he worries he might be going the wrong way. A totally illogical feeling. He knows, but it doesn't stop him from feeling it. The worry aches in his chest as a child. He trips. The stumble catches himself off guard, his balance thrown entirely off. Tears well in his eyes, and no one is around to wipe them away. He does so, and becomes acutely aware of the burning in his knee, and a scratch that feels deeper than it should have been from the simple fall. He feels it through his clothes, and winces. His fingertips are wet. This isn't how the daydream is supposed to go. He gets up now, the bile in his throat rising with him. Yoshihide sprints before he even recognizes that he needs to run. There's something wrong. He runs, and runs, and eventually something scratches him again, ripping a tear through his arm. He yells, clutching it, but keeps running, eyes tight shut. He knows he should open them, but it's too dark, and the horror of the unknown is simply too intense. He keeps running, and another stab pierces his skin, this time directly on his torso. And then another. They're not too deep, but he's bleeding, and he can feel his mud-caked pants mix red. Eventually, whatever is tormenting him causes him to trip once more, sending him slamming into the dirt and rail. His eyes open by force. The moon is out now and shines white glow onto the world. Now he can see the path ahead of him. He screams before him around the rail. Long, thin swords jut out from the trees and the earth. They shine impeccably, as though they've never seen a day of use in their lives. All of them, whether above or below, point directly towards the rail, forming a tunnel of knives, blades, and pure sharp. There's just barely enough room for him to squeeze through. He has to get home. Yoshihide takes several steps, shuddering breaths, and, with trembling trepidation, signals the experiment to start. The observation room is packed. Several bureaucrats, scientists, assistants, and guards are watching with keen anticipation. It's the experiment that will finally, if Yoshihide is to be believed, crack the SCP-001 case wide open. There is a buzz in the air, of excitement, of potentiality, of containment, of penultimate crescendo to the art of the absurd. Yoshihide turns to his right. There, the administrator stands silently. He does not look back at Yoshihide, his eyes glazed and turned towards the D-class in the chamber. It does not seem as though he is particularly eager to see the experiment's conclusion, as though he knows already how it will end. It's possible that he does, which pisses Yoshihide off even more. To distract himself, he turns and speaks instructions into the chamber microphone. The room falls perfectly silent behind him, as though standing in a single file behind a leader. D023, Yoshihide begins, his voice fully authoritative. Please pick up the axe. The man in the orange jumpsuit behind the glass turns up the microphone and scoffs, but he does as he's told. The axe isn't particularly notable. It's standard, built by a mundane facility outside the Vale. No, it's not the axe which is important here. D023, please approach the artifact. It is not hazardous. He does so. The string bleeding from the non-existent paws is anchored in place with wonderful clamping mechanism. It's stretched taut, though this, of course, does not compromise its integrity. The D-Class steps forward. He's gripped firmly on the axe, eyeing the twine with ignorant suspicion. It does not matter if he trusts the Foundation or not. He will do it regardless. He is not much different than I, Yoshihide muses bitterly, a grim truth and reality. He holds the man standing beside him in as much contempt as he does fear. He does not know what the administrator is capable of, nor does he know what his end is, beyond seeing Yoshihide on the O5 Council, though he doesn't know to what conclusion or the outcome will lead either. He leans forward now and reactivates the microphone. D023, he inhales. Please repeatedly slice the string in front of you with the axe. This may require several attempts. Keep trying until the task is completed, or you are ordered to stop. The D-Class shrugs and begins to fulfill his task. The first hit does nothing, though that was well expected. The man was known by Yenka O in his former life. He was a collector of fine arts, a member of an elite circle of art critics with a taste for the anomalous. When he would see a piece he truly admired, he would stop at nothing to obtain it for his private collection, which, of course, inevitably led him to the extreme when he met someone who simply would not give up. Not even the endless hoard of his wealth could save him from prison in the end. His own brothers and sisters of the guild turned on him and threw him away to rot, where he was inevitably scouted. His life was defined by his own whims, a life of decadence, a life of greed, a life, most importantly, of selfishness. And that's the crux of it. Yoshihide sighs as the second strike hits. Selfishness. A heart that is destined to only look inwards, a view that never extends beyond one's own wants. It was obvious to him as soon as blood came to an equation. Personality types based on blood were pseudoscience, but anomalies never operated on scientific principles to begin with. It was just a matter of confirming his theory. He turns rightward as the third strike hits. The string reverberates strangely, and the crowd murmurs as they watch. Yoshihide wonders if the figure standing beside him would qualify as a selfish man. Is the administrator truly acting selflessly? Or was this all brought upon his self-absorption? What did he want that would necessitate all this grooming? Yoshihide was going to complete the work regardless, no? As though noticing him for the first time, the administrator turns, in a manner that one could describe as somber. He doesn't say anything for several beats, long enough that the fourth strike occurs, but then he sighs himself. He always was a selfish man. Yoshihide turns back towards D-Class. I am aware. The administrator chuckles, as though he's on the other end of some inside joke. He turns back towards the string. I suppose you are. Seething, endless rage once again bubbles in his chest. He remembers Yuzuki's face as she screamed, dragged from his office in agonizing pain. He remembers the mountain of smiling bodies, groaning and shifting, decaying in the abandoned pile. He remembers his wife, bleeding out on the pavement. And as the axe strikes the string a fifth time, he imagines the administrator's neck in its place. The man in the chamber continues to strike it, a sixth, seventh, eighth time. The string, while reverberating, loses none of its consistency. Murmurs arise behind him, but neither Yoshihide nor the administrator turn. The tension is palpable, both literal and metaphorical. a 9th, a 10th, and an 11th. Was Yoshihira wrong? The doubt creeps through everyone but the pair. And soon the D-Class is flexing for another blow. Frustration builds at his face. And with one final motion, one final collateral, definitive, inevitable swing, Yoshihira bleeds. He is cut in several dozen pieces, red wounds filling with pus and searing pain, warming his flesh against the freezing cold of the night. The swords surround him, now too tightly packed to be avoided as he turns through the tunnel they form around his frail body. He sobs bitterly, weeping through the pain, but continuing to move, desperate to get home. Desperate for the safety of familiarity. One thought repeats through his mind, over and over as he flees, dominating his conscience and drowning out all else. I don't want to die. At last, through the pale reflections of the moonlight, he sees it up ahead, a light, a shining, shimmering light. An end to the tunnel, an end to the torture. He pushes, receiving several more cuts and spilling several more drops of blood. It doesn't matter. As long as he makes it to the village, he'll finally be safe. Finally be home. He bursts through the final aperture and is greeted by a raging inferno, an endless hell. The construction site is gone. All that remains in his view is houses, burning, rotting into ash and soot and dust. Black clouds roar into the sky in bulky columns, and the entire horizon glows around him. The breeze is replaced by radiated heat, and Yoshihira cowers under the intensity of the flames, under the intensity of the shining light. In spite of this horrific sight, he presses on, and pushing through the tearing and burning sensations that his body screams at him to address. He knows what he must do to make the nightmare end. He needs to find his house. He needs to go home. He needs to find them. He needs to know. He spots it, then, in the center of the inferno, surrounded by flames of the others. It seems untouched. But no. He realizes the fire has already long since burned the home. Its walls now ashen grey. Its wood now riddled with holes. He is far, far too late. Yoshihira steps, trembling, both from fear and exhaustion, into the house. Its doors open without so much as even a push, as though welcoming him back. Nothing greets him, at first, besides the smouldering pale coating the walls. He tries to call out, but all that escapes his throat is a gurgle. He hopes that's not too bad a sign. Slowly, he climbs the staircase across the front door. He goes up, and one bit at a time. Yoshihira meets its steps, gripping the rail for dear life. It takes several minutes for the boy to finish climbing, but when he does, he collapses, panting and exhausted at the second floor's landing. When he does push himself to his feet, it's met with a squelch as blood, type B blood, pulls around his feet. He looks up. The master bedroom door looms ominously, towering above his short stature. Foreboding, it mocks him, challenging him to confront what lies inside, challenging him to face the music. He cannot afford to delay the inevitable. Yoshihira opens the door. In the king bed, two corpses intertwine, holding tightly onto one another. Their flesh is burnt off. Their blood has long boiled. Their hair has been plucked clean from their heads, and their hollow eye sockets stare petrified, longingly, achingly, towards one another. The clothes they both wore have ceased to exist under the now gone hellfire, but it takes no effort for Yoshihira to identify them. He expected this on some level. He expected no happy ending. His gaze rises like a flame. Above, hanging above the bed, a portrait of a man is framed in immaculately pristine condition. His skin mirrors the ash, a sickly mix between bone white and midnight black. The folds of his face wrinkle like a labyrinth, and his teeth shimmer pure. His gaze is affixed with great eyes down towards Yoshihira, piercing him. And then It laughs. The sound fills the room, echoing through the roar of the flames and drowning out every other sensation. Yoshihide covers his ears and screams, if nothing but to drown out the noise. It does not help, and in desperation he crawls. He crawls to the bed, then climbs, with limbs no longer belonging to an 8-year-old child, with forearms far too long and legs aged decades, and grabs the painting with his porous fingernails by the frame. In agony, he rips. The seams split and shred under his grasp, as he sobs and screams and shakes, racked with despair and fear and hatred and overwhelming sadness, encompassing his whole body, his very soul. The world dissipates into the flames, engulfing the house once more, fire, burning fuel well spent. Everything is alight once more, and the man continues to laugh and laugh and laugh, and Yoshihide abandons every ideal, every ounce of decorum he had left, as he rips and maims his face to pieces. The tearing becomes manic and methodical concurrently. There's nothing left besides the searing heat and the face and the blood, the endless strings and the endless pain. He digs his fingernails deeper in, but the man doesn't even mind, as though the flesh he inhabited was ephemeral, as though he was never there at all. The painting is in tatters now, but the laughter continues. There is one final stitch in the canvas, the jugular, strung tightly against the back wall. It bleeds, scarlet, flowing in viscous, endless streams. The fire burns everything beside it, and through the frenzy, Yoshihide pulls. He pulls and pulls and pulls, staining his melting hands crimson, and pulls. He pulls until the very fabric of his body becomes undone, and he screeches a primal final wail as he pulls and 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 pulls until the thread snaps. The water is soft, lapping against the sand. It drags at it, throwing clumps of spray up and back again. The black of the sky shines down, and 05-3, in the cold light of his headlamps, stares at the edge of visibility of all things seen and unseen. He is sitting on a sand dune, waiting. He sips at his beer, his eyes clouding gradually as the evening stretches on and on. He wonders what's on the other side of the sea. He pictures a daytime scene, a beach hut, children building sandcastles, a pier stretching out into the waves. He picks up a handful of sand and lets it trickle through his fingers. He sighs and then starts as the shadow peers over him. "It's time," says the administrator. 05-3 creaks to his feet, willing his limbs to move. He takes a final look back across the water. Where does his sight end? How far across can he see? He isn't sure. The sea and the sky blend together. If a man drowned out there, nobody would witness his death, would ever be able to picture the desperation as he clung to life, flinging himself up and up out of the waves until he was sucked down beneath. He thinks about that, about moments erased from time, but this isn't the hour for that. The administrator is waiting beside the car, and 05-3 trudges towards him, slouching forward to his doom. The car is cold, and 05-3 feels himself shivering. He turns on the radio low. Shostakovich twists from the speakers, pricking the goosebumps on his arm still higher. The administrator is staring out of the window, looking through the trees. The forest is dense here, whispering needles through the wind. 05-3 just stares straight ahead, watching as the road cuts through two emerging hillocks, flashing lights dancing between them. "You say he lives in Rostwick?" The administrator blinks, turning at the question. "Yes." He turns away, his chin on his hand. 05-3 doesn't remember the last time he had a full night's sleep. The hours just tick by him, scratching at his mind, urging him onwards. When he was still Yoshihide, he was careful to be well-rested. His work came first, and he had to ensure that his duty was done properly. The work was bigger than he was, and he couldn't let it down with his own poor choices. But now, he has a broader view of the matter. The work flows from him and through him, burning his way through the night. Working to the point of exhaustion simply alters his state of consciousness. As long as his intent is pure, it continues. The ideas, the methods are simply different. The administrator does not understand that, of course. He watches as the other man sighs, sitting back in his seat. Did I ever tell you what my father thought of Hal? He, 05-3, does not turn. He thought Hal was dying, the process of dying. Yes, he did. Well remembered. My mother disagreed, of course. She thought Hal was the living, waking world. She once painted a mural in our kitchen wall. It was a strange thing, one I held a great deal of affection for. The wonderful thing about driving is that 05-3 can concentrate on that instead of this. He has lost so much, shed so much. That is a wonder the administrator's words still have the effect they do. Maybe it's a pile of bodies, or Yuzuki's face as she was dragged away, but each one feels like a cold, sharp nothing. She wasn't a well woman, you see. Nervous spells, paranoid delusions. Looking at the mural, I felt I understood her better. It made her outbursts make sense. A memory flies by him. I thought your mother died before you knew her. The grin, like a flash, a blinding streak on his periphery. Very good. Top marks today, 05-3. Yes, you're right. I never really knew her, but I could see the effect she had on my family. Maybe I wanted to understand that, to reach through to her. Maybe I could heal the family. And did you? It slips out, and he curses himself. But the administrator doesn't seem angry. He just turns those eyes, those dark, shaded glasses onto him. Don't you think you should watch the road? They continued on in silence, watching as the moon falls down across the sky, spreading black ink among the stars. The cabin is sitting in the woods, waiting for them. A single light shines from behind the glass as the pair of them trudge towards the door. The ground is wet, a thick mud that squelches up to their ankles. Their flashlights scrabble for the path, but they can't find it. The cabin is a small log affair. It's not well maintained. The timbers look like they're starting to rot. 05-3 raps on the door, attentive, alert. An owl hoots dimly, far in the distance, as the reeds wave in the gloom. A chair scrapes inside. There are footsteps, the sound of a metal cane tapping on the floor. The administrator starts to whistle, staring up the moon. The door opens to a middle-aged man in his early 40s. He is rake thin, his face bristling with light, wiry stubble. He looks at them both, blinking against the cold, and then he sighs. Yes, of course. Come in, then. 05-3 shares a look with the administrator, and they step into the warm, cramped space. A thin wire bed dominates the far wall, and a wooden desk and a table stand in front of them. Papers and pen are strewn across the desk. The stranger sits down, looks them up and down, and gestures to the bed. The pair of them sit on it, side by side, awkwardly tucking their knees in. 05-3 feels like a child again, like an absurdity. A warm bulb hums gently above them. A fly bounces off of it, whining. The stranger takes out a box of cigarettes. They both decline, so he shrugs and lights himself up, still staring at them. Thought you'd never find me, if I'm honest. You were quite difficult to track down, I must say. 05-3 glances over. The administrator speaks carefully with intent as he scans the stranger's face. But I knew that I'd see you again. I never forget. The stranger smiles, puffing smoke into the air. And now you want to lock me up, is that right? No. 05-3 shifts, leaning forward. The man doesn't look at him. Or perhaps we have. There is a job that we want you to do. If you do it for us, we'll leave you alone. The administrator is staring upwards and says nothing. O5-3 coughs and continues. There is an anomaly, a dangerous one that has plagued us for years, and which has taken countless lives. You could be of great help, not only to us, but to... The stranger snorts. He's got you on SCP-001, has he? O5-3 pauses. He looks at the administrator, who is still looking up, ignoring him. I didn't realize you'd been briefed. I haven't. I just remember the last one. You know this isn't the first anomaly to take that slot, right? O5-3 turns back sharply. It isn't? The administrator nudges him and points upwards. O5-3 looks up and gasps. The smoke from the cigarette is coating the ceiling, billowing around its edges. A picture is forming. Through the haze and the gloom, a smoke-filled dragon, its wings flapping towards an open sky. There, and not there all at once. That was mine, you see. That's what he wanted me to deal with. He had another fellow, too, just like you. O5-9, I think it was. Whatever happened to him? My colleague is fine, he says stiffly. He's still staring up at the image, watching it twist into and out of itself. The stranger glances at him, smiling. Pretty, isn't it? The trick was to send it back to its own non-reality. It was a lie, and to a lie it returned. He sticks out a gangly hand. O5-3 takes it, gingerly. The stranger tilts his head. Chokodo Shujin, weaver of miracles. He doesn't know what we're going to do to him. He thinks as clear as day inside his mind. Type Q reality bender, murmurs the administrator. O5-3 watches as his boss stands up, still staring at the ceiling, admiring the waveforms. Call me what you like, old man. It's all the same to me. Shujin curls up in his chair, holding the cigarette away from him. His eyes are beetle black, fixated on O5-3's gaunt, aging face. The overseer instinctively reaches up to the back of his hand, willing his dead hair to return. The administrator snaps back to the world. It's a simple offer, Shujin. Return with us now, help us out, and I'll leave you alone, for good this time. Stay, and we'll send a team after you. Type Qs are in short supply, explains O5-3. I've determined it's our best bet. We need to undermine the anomaly's moral sense. Yes, I remember. It was the same back in the day. This isn't about physics, it's about narrative. About the lessons taught and learnt. Old Ein, his problem was the lies he told. And he drew the foolish to him. It was an easy one. Yours, though. The selfish. O5-3 feels a little sting of pride, remembering the snapping thread and the gasping crowd. Those who only think of themselves. Their own petty concerns. It's a vague criteria, and it's cut through, through hundreds now. The eyes don't move. There's a warmth to them, a crackling fire behind them, pinning him to the wall. Fascinating. No wonder you're scared. Shujin stands up and starts putting a handful of scattered items, papers, a book, a toothbrush, into a canvas bag, haphazardly and randomly. O5-3 blinks and rouses himself. So you'll come with us? Of course he will. The administrator heads to the door, opening it wide. The cold air rushes in. The light bulb flickers. Come on, we don't have all night. Shujin looks at him and shrugs. He shoulders his bag, and the three of them step out into the dark. Site-01 isn't too far away. O5-3 wondered about that before and about why Reality Bender would hide under the noses of the Foundation's highest officers. But now he feels that he knows. There's a quiet confidence in Shujin's tone, his manner of speech, the way he moves through space. He knew they'd come for him, eventually. What was the point in delaying the inevitable? The pitch tar of evening still surrounds them, an evening that stretches into the small hours, retaining the same sense of time, of anticipation. The administrator has called ahead, making sure the arrangements are made. They've been planning this for months, ever since O5-3 first hit on the idea. He feels himself there again, one late night in his office, watching the ceiling refracted through the ochre tint of whiskey, the lines spiraling out of his control. The administrator is sleeping now, dozing off in the back seat. Shujun stares straight ahead of him, tapping in time to the music from the radio. Schönberg, late Schönberg, screeching out dissonance into the flashes of cat's eye lights on the road. 05-3 clears his throat. Was he always like this? Shujun smirks. The administrator? Oh, always. A cold, predatory lizard, that one. I'm surprised that he came out here with you. You'd think that he had better things to do. 05-3 nods. Every time I'm on the edge of something, about to finish something, there he is, hovering at my elbow, reminding me of this. SCP-001. He wants it to be me that does it, and I don't know why. Maybe he thinks that you're well suited for the job. He snorts. At first, sure, I got quite the lucky break to start with. Made a huge breakthrough, got everyone's attention. Since then, though, I don't know. Other projects, other containments I can get done. Big things, grand things. Not this, though. It's always eluded me. Everything I try just, fails. Shujun nods. SCP-001 is a tough one. Always was for all of us. Us. But Shujun doesn't answer. The trees rear up, flashing beside his face. Leering through the window, they lapse into silence for a while before the strange man speaks again. Do you know how many there have been? 05 frowns. How many what? Iterations of 001. There is a snore, a jerking noise from the administrator behind him. 05-3 turns the wheel, concentrating for a moment on a curve, trying to suppress the rising panic. The number of events it's caused is... No, not that. I mean, how many bodies there have been? He knew he wasn't the first. He presumed rather, that the administrator had plucked others from obscurity, as the lost souls like himself. But the question was terrifying. How many had there been? Did 001 mean anything? Was it just a name for something else? A test? A coming of age? You don't know, right? Shujin's face, smiling, peers up at him. Yeah, they don't usually. He's got something on you, right? Something you want. He feels guilty. He has barely thought of her this whole time. My daughter. Shujin nods. And so you've done so much, sacrificed so much to maneuver yourself here, to finally be in a position to help her. Free her. When he became an 05, donning the blackened suit, stepping into the charcoal room, he thought he'd do it right away. Requisition her, an anomaly required for testing, set her up away from them all, under his protection. Maybe he wouldn't be able to see her. Maybe he'd have to stay away. But she'd be free. But there had been a little nagging voice sitting in that room, whispering to him. Sure, you might get her out for a day, a month, but sooner or later they'd know what you'd done. They'd come for her. Best to wait. You're not immune, even here. Best to build up your position. Make sure you're safe. First, prove yourself to them. To him. The administrator had sat at the end of the table, staring into him, powering his mind and energy through those dark glasses. It was another refraction, but every beam of light and shade had bounced back on the central point. The icicle stabbing in his brain, scattering it, and making it his own. In the present, he shakes himself. Yes, he feels the dampness growing around the corners of his eyes. Shujin nods and pats his arm. I know, I've seen it all before, and before that too. There is one more great echoing silence, as Yoshihito wipes away his fright, his pain. The trees are taller here, slashing themselves across the windows, bleeding the same dark and the same needles and the same pine freshness that they always do, binding and blinding back into himself as the pit opens up beneath. He knows what's down there. He knows what part of his soul is dwelling there. And he asks, what happened to the others? Were they free when it was done? But Shujin doesn't answer. Yoshihito, 05-3, hears nothing more from him. He looks ahead and continues on. Through the road as it curves and strange, hacking its way through the night. It's a road that always seems like it'll bend back on itself, take you to where you were before, but it never does. And behind him, his slitted eyes halfway open, the administrator's gaze bores into the back of his skull. The chamber was an office a long time ago. 05-3 has learned not to think too hard about that. He asked the administrator once who SCP-001 had been. He had not received an answer. A complex of rooms has been built around it. The observation decks look down from above, towering from one side, like it has clipped outside of the world and is examining a scene from a film, but from the wrong angle. The actors, the cocoon, the threads, their newfound friend, will be playing out the little drama without seeing their faces, so high up, staring down below. Standing up here, his hands on the rail, 05-3 feels a rare, surging power. The ceiling has been replaced with glass. It looks so fragile, the winding silk pressed up against it. Inside it, behind the creeping strands that tie themselves over and over, is a corpse. It's an old corpse now. It cannot be seen. Its stench is contained, but it must still be there, binding and rebinding itself over and over, constantly repeating the same actions, the same phrase. It's not enough to read about it. He watches it stick, shift, move, its pale and sickly limbs reorganizing themselves endlessly, grasping at walls that have no purchase. In the last few years, he has spent so much time here, in this spot. It's like an old friend, a comforting wound. Below him lies an imperfection, an affront to the work, an insoluble problem. He has spent so many hours on it, thinking up new ways to assault the problem. Black chains of cursed iron, the shredded horns of a teetering owl, hooting in anguish and pain, as its powdered pride was thrown, urged, pumped into the threads, and nothing happened. At each time, he knew with crystal certainty that it would never work. It would never be contained. Then the idea came to him. It had seemed inevitable. The way they normally worked, tugging on people's fingers, slipping into their blood and bone. This was a drama, a grand melodrama, played out again and again. Like a Passion Week, or Ashura, or Magar Puja. The same single moment in the past playing out over and over again, making it real once more while the people flock and preen around. And now he's here. The kindling has been stacked below. He has journeyed forth, seen the world, and now he's returned, standing here at the precipice, the gates at the end of the road. The door behind him opens and the administrator walks in. 05-3 nods at him. He almost smiles. Finally today. He wins. Finally today. It'll be complete. Then Shujin walks in behind him. 05-3 frowns, confused. But you're not meant to be here. You're meant to be in the chamber. The administrator smiles, a smile that widens and widens and widens like a holy blessed moon, white teeth arrayed like tombstones. The first day he came into his office, he smiled like that. There's been a bit of a change, you see, Yoshihide. I wasn't entirely honest about what Shujin is doing here. Shujin himself can't meet his eye. He simply walks over to the rail and looks down. 05-3 feels the jaws of a trap around him, but he can't tell where, from what. His mind pushes out, confused, unclear. He's not a Type Q, in fact. His skills are, something else. No. As far as I can tell, there's only one Type Q in the country right now. Only one capable of bending truth and lies apart. He turns and looks down. He frowns again, more slightly. But, sir, there must have been a mistake. That's Yuzuki down there. The administrator places a hand on his shoulder. Yes, precisely. A Type Q is blasphemy. That's how he was starting to think of it. It's something that shouldn't exist, something he doesn't want to exist. They may appear to change an object's shape, its size, perform miracles of transformation and transmutation, but in point of fact, they reach into other worlds, other possible branching times. They take what could have been and make it not a lie, but a truth. So say you're sitting in a restaurant, God knows how long ago, and laughing with your daughter. Say she takes a fork and presses it and molds its shape into something else, like a spoon. All she's really doing is looking back at another world, a world where her mother might be alive, her father warm and present, and take something from that place, barely realizing it. A fork becomes a spoon, a dead hope becomes alive. Yoshihide screams and rushes across the room, heading for the microphone. Why is it so distant? Why is it where it can't be reached? But the administrator's hand, claw-like, grips him in place, roots him to the floor. Let me go, you bastard, it's her. She's not safe, she's... The administrator drags him with impossible strength back to the rail. He takes a hand and forces it on Yoshihide's head, making him look down. There amidst the thread and silk, there is Yuzuki. She's older, thinner. She's lost too much weight, he thinks. Between the throbbing screams, petrified, her back against the wall. They'll do nothing without an order. We didn't tell anyone, remember? We didn't tell anyone what we were going to do. The cocoon moves. It shifts in anticipation. It's not harmful to the touch. It consumes slowly, inexorably, its victims picked and plucked from day to day, elsewhere in time and space. The body's dead hand picks according to its own designs, shifting from victim to victim. The order hasn't been given. He just won't give the order, he won't. And I'll let you go, Yoshihide, as soon as you want me to. But do you want me to? He yells, spitting in his face. Yes, let me go now. I have to get to her. But you don't. Shujin's voice is quiet, resigned. He's holding a notepad, his pen poised above it, leaning over the rail. A lit cigarette wafts behind his ear. I've seen you. I've noted you, Yoshihide, recorded you, just like I did the others. You know what you want. The black thread reaches up inside his head, yearning, stretching, breaking. The administrator's hand feels almost warm now, almost comforting. He leans forward and whispers into Yoshihide's ear. There are no other type Qs we have access to. And 05-3 stops struggling. He stops moving. He just looks down, into the pit of Yuzuki's haunted face. He knows what will happen now. He sees the lines react, intersect, converge. He sees the point around which it all turns, has always turned. The writhing bodies slathering to the forest floor, the axe rebounding again and again along the wire. He claws, he wails, he pleads with himself. But at last the calm descends. He knows he has always wanted this. He wanted the little child bouncing on the minecart, to slice the thread entire, to give himself over to hell. He wanted the box, and only the box forever. It's the work, Yoshihide, whispers the administrator. I told you long ago. No room for discrimination. We are the keepers of the box. So many years. So much spilled time to contain SCP-001. To burn the cocoon from the inside. He stares down at Yuzuki's face, its mournful oval shape, its black O where her mouth should be. She looks up, and for a second, their eyes meet. She is incredulous. She is pleading. She is broken on the wire. She cannot understand what she sees. He places a hand on the glass, the tears washing down his cheeks. Then he looks away, into the dark walls around, the winding chimney of the tower that breathes and breaks around him. He wanted to contain the world. He wanted perfection. And now he's here, sitting by the side of the sea, staring into black. The administrator releases him. 05-3 straightens his suit, adjusts his tie, and walks to the microphone. He grips it hard and speaks clear and straight into it. Administer Q Alpha. And he forces himself to watch as her blood slams into the wall, as it starts to shift planes and truth and lies, altering the molecules and atoms, confusing the body that screeches and ranches against himself. He watches as her form twists and shatters and drowns and burns, all her deaths merging and collecting into one. He sees her possibilities, her lives, her unlives, warping into the silk, infusing it, merging into the fine mesh of string and paper that scatters all around forever. Now you know, says the administrator. He is weeping, tears of unbridled joy. His hand is gripping his shoulder. He is supporting himself on 05-3's weight. Now you'll see, Yoshihide. Now you'll see it as an ending, as it truly is. No more suffering for her, right? In this torture, she doesn't have to think. Her burden is lifted. And containment, perfection, for us. We've done it. We've ended it. No more. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not relevant. It's something else, some mission or journey of its own. He has eyes only for the stars below, ripping into sky and night, twisting on a fulcrum axis until they've worn themselves out, blowing like winding bulbs. A lid on the beast at last. A little brass monkey rears up from the noise, moaning, tearing him to shreds. And then there's another day. 05-3 returns to his office. He's arranged it in the same way as it was when the administrator first entered it, back in his old site. The walls and furniture are different, yet the same, just the way he likes it. He sits down at his desk and performs 8 hours of consistent, unspectacular work. Yuzuki is there, voiceless, screaming at him, but he ignores her. There are procedures and principles to fix, maintain, include. Outside, it grows dark, clouds covering the sun. There was no body, but a grave marker has been placed out there anyway. As he returns from lunch, 05-3 glances at it on the way back to the desk. He hears her wail, but shrugs, wiping his mouth. An egg and cress sandwich. He sits on his chair at the desk, reading his papers. A wall of bodies cascading onto him, moaning. A hunter with a knife leering out at him. He shakes them off himself and continues sorting the new procedures from an obscure anomaly placed under his jurisdiction. He books tickets for the flight to Brussels as he hurtles down a slope and into an avenue of swords over and over again. His flesh and memory sliced and rent apart. His expression does not change as they pierce his flesh and remold his image. The grave is there, but he has eyes only for the door. He imagines the moment the administrator will enter again. He blinks, and it is years ago. And his secretary, he hasn't learned their names yet, pokes his head into the office. "A visitor for you, Director," he said. Yoshihide sits up straight in his chair. This wouldn't be the first encounter with an 05 liaison, and he knows enough to never let your guard down around these people. Liaisons are vipers. Persons who had abandoned all. Shujin walks through the door, closing it behind him. 05-3 stares. He blinks hard and motions his guest to sit. Shujin does, shuffling over, lighting a new cigarette. His eyes burn and crackle, a smile playing across his mouth. "Is something funny?" he, 05-3, asks. "No, I'm sorry. I get nervous quite often. I never like having to do this. I'm sorry we deceived you." The smile is a sad one, he concedes. He straightens up. "I'm not bothered. The work was done well. It was neat containment." The smile doesn't go away. "I'm sorry all the same. I know it doesn't seem like it now, but, well, she was your daughter. That matters for something." Last night, he was reviewing some old personnel files. He stumbles across a ghost file, one that someone hadn't deleted properly. The old 05-3's file. His blood type. It seems it had been B. "What were you there for? What was the point of fetching you from the cabin?" Shujin gets up and walks to the window. Why is his cigarette not setting off smoke alarm? He shrugs to himself. The man is a reality bender of some kind. Who knows what their powers entail? He doesn't anymore. "I was there to record, to act as a witness, a scribe if you like. I keep the memory, you see. I keep the memory of your change." He frowns. "What change?" Shujin shoots him a look. "You didn't feel it. I'm surprised. It happens to you all in the end. Something breaks at you and you die. Suicide, martyrdom, a desperate bid for revenge. He thinks he stopped it now, but..." The nightingale calls to its mate outside. Yuzuki slashes his face with a carving knife. He wipes away the blood and turns back to Shujin, listening to the thin man as his voice turns to a whisper. "When it's happened, you see, when you become an 05, really become one. Your death is no longer a normal death. It's something else, and I record it, you see. In here," he taps his head, "and on the page. He thinks he can control the narrative, make it his own. Rashomon, he calls it. Each life stealing from the last until you reach hell. You reach an ending." He blinks hard. His hand starts to shake. "But that's never how it goes down, Yashihida. He doesn't realize that as I do. I can write on the face of time, but the words will fade and die all the same. The administrator is a fool. He doesn't know hell at all." Shujin flicks the cigarette away, heads to the door, and turns back, his hand gripping the handle. "He couldn't if he tried." He leaves. Yuzuki dies again, frail in his arms. He weeps for her. She dies again, drowning in the swamp. He reaches for her arms and fails. Then she sits inside a carriage, a noble woman's death, as an emperor sneers, winning it on, and he watches, staring, unmoving, as she is choked into the blackened ash. All he is contained within four walls. The office is the only reality left to him now. Beyond those doors are mirrors beyond mirrors, Byzantine halls leading back to him, his own self divided along the roads. He pats his pockets, but remembers that he already sent the note. He tightens the noose. He makes sure the chair is firm. It has to be firm. It has to fall away just right for this to work. Yuzuki nods at him encouragingly, her eyes black orbs lost in the midst beyond. He pauses, one hand on the chair. He looks across at her grave, distant, fragile, a stone too far removed to make the shape of. He stands in the chair for a better look. He sees trees beneath clouds. Behind the marker, he sees her opposite him, laughing at his jokes over dinner, swapping stories each to each. He sees his wife, her figure shaded in the trees, staring up at him. Once, when Yuzuki was very small. "What are you doing?" He turns to the door. The administrator stands there. His face is apoplectic. He is terrified, horrified, furious beyond measure. He steps forward, and Yoshihide puts his face into the noose. No, you can't do this to me. You're not doing this to me, not again, not now." The administrator lurches forward, and Yoshihide lifts one foot. The administrator pauses, sweating, balling his hands into impotent fists. His glasses slip, crashing to the black and marble floor. "I made you." Yoshihide stares back, listening. He starts to feel himself in his own throat, bubbling through. I made you like I made the others. You are not exceptional, or an exception, Yoshihide. You are rote. I took you because your mind was useful to me. Containment as art, as a perfect art. Ridiculous. And yet, it was there. I could use you as a lid on the chaos. The wire tightens, and Yoshihide pauses, fascinated. The work isn't a paltry fantasy. It is not a game. His boss's breathing was slow, labored, heavy. It's the only control we have. Come down. We can talk about this. My God, the arrogance of you, the presumption. What is hell, sir? The administrator blinks. What is hell, sir? Where are its contours? Your father thought it was dying, but dying implies an ending. You said it was an ending. You don't know anything, do you? You just try and impose yourself again and again on us. Me, all the rest, guessing your little games in your petty little stage. The chair teeters. His nemesis draws in his breath. The corpses wait, ready, stretched almost to the point of bursting. I'll tell you what hell is, sir. Hell is for the living. Hell is ever-changing, ever-adapting. An inferno of our lives. Hell does not stop. Here, let me show you. And 05-3 kicks the chair over, watching the administrator recoil, flailing to the floor, sprawling as she had sprawled. 05-3 kicks and silently yelps, scrabbling at his own throat, and then expires, swinging from side to side like a pendulum. But Yoshihide is exalted. He is in the walls. He is in the air. He creeps up and about and within, red and black and gold. His fire ignites, spreading, rushing in a blinding, screaming pain. He looks up, spreading his arms, burning, burning, burning. Above him is Yuzuki's face, pale and shining, a thing in mourning. She reaches down as he reaches up, feeling the fire lick his soul, catch it, bind him down and down. He extends a hand and feels a taut and snapping thread. Then she is gone, gone forever, extinguished. The administrator flees, and Yoshihide is all alone, reaching out, struggling, for a forever lost to him. End of story. This is obviously an April Fool's joke. I am not giving up HUY. I do not plan to do so in the future. However, if you do like this sort of tales from the SCP world, I don't mind doing them again, but this all depends on how well this video is received. But HUY will still be around, and I will still be narrating it for the foreseeable future. Anyways, thank you for sticking around for this story, and I hope you enjoyed this little April Fool's joke. Anyways, I'll see you in the next HUY tale. Cheers. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Sevaren Serberous, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.